Chapter 34 of Tante. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Dion Johns, Salt Lake City, Utah. Tante by Anne Douglas Sedgwick. Chapter 34. Karen, during the 2 or 3 days that followed her strange conversation with Mrs. Talcott, felt that while she pitied and cared for Mrs. Talcott as she had never yet pitied and cared for her, she was also afraid of her. Mrs. Talcott had spoken no further word, and her eyes rested on her with no more than their customary steadiness. But Karen knew that there were many words she could speak. What were they? What was it that Mrs. Talcott knew? What secrets were they that she carried about in her lonely ancient heart? Mrs. Talcott loomed before her like a veiled figure of destiny, bearing an urn within which lay the ashes of dead hopes. Mrs. Talcott's eyes looked at her above the urn. It was always with them. When they gardened together, it was as if Mrs. Talcott set it down on the ground between them, and as if she took it up again with a sigh of fatigue. It was heavy when they turned to go. Karen felt herself tremble as she scrutinized the funereal shape. There was no refuge with Mrs. Talcott. Mrs. Talcott holding her urn was worse than the lonely fears. And for those 2 or 3 days of balmy, melancholy spring, the lonely fears did not press so closely. They wheeled far away against the blue. Tante was kinder to her and was more aware of her. She almost seemed a little ashamed of the scene with the piano. She spoke to Karen of it, flushing a little, explaining that she had slept badly, and that Karen's rendering of the Bach had made her nervous, emphasizing too the rule, new in its explicitness, that the grand piano was only to be played on by Karen when it was left open. "You did not understand, but it is well to understand rules, is it not, my child?" said Madame von Marwitz, "and this one, I know, you will not transgress again." Karen said that she understood. She had something of her rocky manner in receiving these implicit apologies and commands, yet her guardian could see an almost sick relief rising in her jaded young eyes. Other things were different. Tante seemed now to wish very constantly to have her there when Mr. Drew was with her. She made much of her to Mr. Drew. She called his attention to her skill in gardening, to her directness of speech, to her individuality of taste in dress. These expositions made Karen uncomfortable, yet they seemed an expression of Tante's desire to make amends. And Mr. Drew, with his vague, impenetrable regard, helped her to bear them. It was as if, a clumsy child, she were continually pushed forward by a fond, tactless mother, and as if, mildly shaking her hand, the guest before whom she was displayed showed her, by kind, inattentive eyes, that he was paying very little attention to her. Mr. Drew put her at her ease, and Tante embarrassed her. She became even a little grateful to Mr. Drew. But now, aware of this strange bond, it was more difficult to talk to him when they were alone, and when, once or twice, he met her in the garden or house, she made always an excuse to leave him. She and Mr. Drew could have nothing to say to each other when Tante was not there. One evening, returning to Les Solitudes after a walk along the cliffs, Karen found that tea was over, as she had intended that it should be, Tante and Mr. Drew not yet come in from their motoring, and Mrs. Talcott safely busied in the garden. There was not one of them with whom she could be happily alone, and she was glad to find the morning room empty. Mrs. Talcott had left the kettle boiling for her on the tea table, and the small teapot, which they used in their usual tete-a-tete, ready, and Karen made herself a cup. She was tired. She sat down, when she had her tea, near the window, and looked out over the ranged white flowers growing in their low white pots on the window seat, at the pale sea and sky. She sat quietly, her cheek on one hand, the other in her lap, and from time to time a great involuntary sigh lifted her breast. It seemed nearer peace than fear, this mood of immeasurable pale sorrow. It folded her round like the twilight falling outside. The room was dim when she heard the sound of the returning motor, and she sat on, believing that here she would be undisturbed. Tante rarely came to the morning room. But it was Tante who presently appeared, wearing still her motoring cloak and veil, the nun-like veil bound round her head. Karen thought, as she rose and looked at her, that she was like one of the ghost-like white flowers, and there was no joy for her in seeing her. She seemed to be part of the sadness. She turned and closed the door with some elaboration, and as she came nearer, Karen recognized in her eyes the piteous look of quelled watchfulness. "You are sitting here alone, my child?" she said, laying her hand, but for a moment only, on Karen's shoulder. Karen had resumed her seat, and Tante moved away at once to take up a vase of flowers from the mantelpiece, smell the flowers, and set it back. "Where is Tallie?" "Still in the garden, I think. I worked with her this morning, and before tea. Since tea I have had a walk." "Where did you walk?" Madame von Marwitz inquired, moving now over to the upright piano, and bending to examine, in the dusk, the music that stood on it. Karen described her route. "But it is lonely, very lonely for you, is it not?" Tante murmured after a moment's silence. Karen said nothing, and she went on. "And it will be still more lonely if, as I think probable, I must leave you here before long. I shall be going, perhaps to Italy." A sensation of oppression that she could not have analyzed passed over Karen. Why was Tante going to Italy? Why must she leave Les Solitudes? Her mind could not rest on the supposition that her own presence drove Tante forth, that the broken tête-à-tête was to be resumed under less disturbing circumstances. She could not ask Tante if Mr. Drew was to be in Italy, yet this was the question that pressed on her heart. "Oh, but I am very used to Les Solitudes," she said. "Used to it, yes, too used to it," said Madame von Marwitz, seating herself now near Karen, her eyes still moving about the room. "But it is not right, it is not fitting, that you should spend your youth here. That was not the destiny I had hoped for you. I came here to find you, Karen, so that I might talk to you." Her fingers slightly tapped her chair arm. "We must talk. We must see what is to be done." "Do you mean about me, Tante?" Karen asked after a moment. The look of the ghostly room and of the white enfolded figure seated before her, with its restless eyes, seemed part of the chill that Tante's words brought. "About you? Yes. About who else? Parbleu!" said Madame von Marwitz, with a slight laugh, her eyes shifting about the room, and with a change of tone she added, "I have it on my heart, your situation, day and night. Something must be done, and I am prepared to do it." "To do what?" asked Karen. Her voice too had changed, but not, as Madame von Marwitz's, to a greater sweetness. "Well, to save it, the situation, to help you." Madame von Marwitz's ear was quick to catch the change. "And I have come, my Karen, to consult with you. It is a matter, many would say, for my pride to consider, but I will not count my pride. Your happiness, your dignity, your future are the things that weigh with me. I am prostrated, made ill, by the miserable affair. You see it, you see that I am not myself. I cannot sleep. It haunts me, you and your broken life, and what I have to propose," Tante looked down at her tapping fingers while she spoke, "is that I offer myself as intermediary. Your husband will not take the first step forward. So be it. I will take it. I will write to Mrs. Forrester. I will tell her that if your husband will but offer me the formal word of apology, I will myself induce you to return to him. What do you say, my Karen? Oh, to me, as you know, the forms are indifferent. It is of you and your dignity that I think. I know you. Without that apology from him to me, you could not contemplate a reconciliation. But he has now had his lesson, your young man, and when he knows that, through me, you would hold out the olive branch, he will, I predict, spring to grasp it. After all, he is in love with you, and has had time to find it out. And even if he were not, his mere man's pride must writhe to see himself abandoned. And you, too, have had your lesson, my poor Karen, and have seen that romance is a treacherous sand to build one's life upon. Dignity, fitness, one's rightful place in life, have their claims. You are one, as I told you, to work out your destiny in the world, not in the wilderness. What do you say, Karen? I would not write without consulting you. Hein! What is it? Karen had risen, and Madame von Marwitz's eyelashes fluttered a little in looking up at her. I will never forgive you. I will never forgive you, said Karen in a harsh voice, if you speak of this again. What is this that you say to me, Karen? Madame von Marwitz, too, rose. Never speak to me of this again, said Karen. In the darkening room they looked at each other as they had never in all their lives looked before. They were equals in maturity of demand. For a strange moment sheer fury struggled with subtler emotions in Madame von Marwitz's face, and then self-pity, overpowering, engulfing all else. "And is this the return you make me for my love?" she cried. Her voice broke in desperate sobs, and long-pent misery found relief. She sank into her chair. "I asked for no reconciliation," said Karen. "I left him, and we knew that we were parting forever. There is no love between us. Have you no understanding at all, and no thought of my pride?" It was woman addressing woman. The child Karen was gone. "Your pride," Madame von Marwitz repeated in her sobs. "And what of mine? Was it not for you, stony-hearted girl? Is it not your happiness I seek? If I had been mistaken in my hopes for you, is that a reason for turning upon me like a serpent?" Karen had walked to the long window that opened to the veranda and looked out, pressing her forehead to the pane. "You must forgive me if I was unkind. What you said burned me." "Ah, it is well for you to speak of burnings," Madame von Marwitz sobbed, aware that Karen's wrath was quelled. "I am scorched by all of you," she repeated incoherently. "All the burdens fall upon me, and, in reward, I am spurned and spat upon by those I seek to serve." "I am sorry, Tante. It was what you said, that you should think it possible." "Sorry, sorry! It is easy to say that you are sorry when you have rolled me in the dust of your insults and your ingratitude." Yet the sobs were quieter. "Let us say, then, that it has been misunderstanding," said Karen. She still stood in the window, but as she spoke the words, she drew back suddenly. She had found herself looking into Mr. Drew's eyes. His face, gazing in oddly upon her, was at the other side of the pane, and in the apparition, its suddenness, its pallor, rising from the dusk, there was something almost horrible. "Who is that?" came Tante's voice, as Karen drew away. She had turned in her chair. It seemed to Karen, then, that the room was filled with the whirring wings of wild emotions, caught and crushed together. Tante had sprung up, and came with long, swift strides to the window. She, too, pressed her face against the pane. "Ah, it is Claude," she said, in a hushed, strange voice, "and he did not see that I was here. What does he mean by looking in like that?" She spoke now angrily, drying her eyes as she spoke. She threw open the window. "Claude, come here." Mr. Drew, whose face seemed to have sunk, like a drowned face, back into dark water, returned to the threshold, and paused, arrested by his friend's wretched aspect. "Come in, enter," said Madame von Marwitz, with a withering stateliness of utterance. "You have the manner of a spy. Did you think that Karen and I were quarrelling?" "I couldn't think that," said Mr. Drew, stepping into the room, for I didn't see that you were here." "We have had a misunderstanding," said Madame von Marwitz. "No more, and now we understand again. Is it not so, my Karen? You are going?" "I think I will go to my room," said Karen, who looked at neither Madame von Marwitz nor Mr. Drew. "You will not mind if I do not come to dinner tonight?" "Certainly not. No, do as you please. You are tired, I see it, and I too am tired." She followed Karen to the door, murmuring, "Sans rancune, n'est-ce pas?" "Yes, Tante." As the door closed upon Karen, Madame von Marwitz turned to Mr. Drew. "If you wish to see her, why not seek her openly? Who makes it difficult for you to approach her?" Her voice had the sharpness of splintering ice. "Why, no one, ma chérie," said Mr. Drew. "I wasn't seeking her." "No? And what did it mean then, your face pressed close to hers, there at the window?" "It meant that I couldn't see who it was who stood there. Just as I can hardly now see more than that you are unhappy. What is the matter, my dear and beautiful friend?" His voice was solicitous. Madame von Marwitz dropped again into her chair, and leaning forward, her hands hanging clasped between her knees, she again wept. "The matter is the old one," she sobbed. "Ingratitude. Ingratitude on every hand. My crime now has been that I have sought, at the sacrifice of my own pride, to bring a reconciliation between that stubborn child and her husband, and for my reward she overwhelms me with abuse." "Tell me about it," said Mr. Drew, seating himself beside her and, unreproved, taking her hand. Chapter 34.